The reported arrests of several illegal mining kingpins has brought new momentum into government's fight against what they had called zamas, or illegal miners. Now, illegal mining cost South Africa about 49 billion rand in 2019, while threatening the security of local communities and the environment. Some observers have, however, commented that it will still be an uphill struggle, alleging that syndicates in the illegal mining industry are under protection of corrupt police and politicians. Earlier this month, Energy Minister Chris van Aswegen announced that the government planned to establish a specialized police unit. Joining us now to discuss this and more, our Institute of Security Studies Senior Training Coordinator Willem Els, as well as Chris van Aswegen, a mining expert and Managing Director at Chairwork. You can be a part of the conversation tonight. Are there gaps in our laws, or do we have enough laws in place to be able to contend with the syndicates that control illegal mining in the country? What are your thoughts tonight? 072-110-5584. We'll take those thoughts on that WhatsApp number. Or otherwise, you can tweet us tonight at Newzroom 405. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us tonight here on In Focus. We've read a number of reports and a number of comments that have been said, particularly around whether or not the enforcing of laws in the country to deal with illegal mining is as easy as the takedown operations we have been seeing and the dramatic show of force. Willem, let's start with you. I mean, yourself as the Institute of Security Studies, that is, have also released a number of reports, and we're going to talk into some of those issues that you have raised in those reports. But first, though, let's just talk about that. Is it an easy undertaking that we are led to believe, now that we've arrested these kingpins or several of them, yes, we are making headway?
Tabo, yes, thank you for having us. That's a good question. You know, the 11 kingpins, they are just sort of the ears of the hippo, you know. There are many more. And even if it's the kingpins, what about the dealers? You know, if there's not a market for this gold to be sold and to be smuggled out of the country, so there's no demand, then there won't be this huge boom in the illegal mining industry. That on the one end is true, you know. And you're talking about legislation and legislation being enforced. As far back as the early 2000s, while I was still a police officer with the bomb disposal unit of the police, we undertook some operations in several mines, amongst them the Masimong in Welkom, as well as one of the two of the Cook shafts here on the West Rand. And your challenge there is that, you know, if you don't find this illegal miner with GBM, that's your gold-bearing material, or with explosives, or with stolen equipment, you know, you're arresting for trespassing, because we simply don't have the legislation in place in order to effectively prosecute these people. That, on the one hand, is a challenge. I think we don't have that in place. Secondly, I don't think the police have got the sufficient manpower and resources to have an effective intelligence structure in place, and also not an investigation structure. It's specialized investigations that need to take place. Of course, it does a lot of different disciplines, for instance, explosives, mining, etc., etc. So you need a specialized task team, and we are really fortunate to hear that they are going to establish these task teams in order to further these investigations.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about those issues that you're raising. Chris, let me just get you in here as part of your opening remarks. From a miner's point of view, how deep are the roots of this underworld economy, and do we have real strategy on the part of the mining companies themselves, capacity and skills in terms of the justice and security systems in the country to investigate these complex organized crimes?
Yeah, good evening, Tabo, and thanks for having us. You know, we've been trying to voice this problem and this concern that we've had as miners for a long time now, and I don't think there's an easy answer, but I think there is an answer that we can work towards. Now, if you look at legislation that is in our surrounding countries, with the Makorokosas, like Zimbabwe, where there is a legalized structure where these guys can come in and actually do mine. I think the bigger concern in South Africa is how do you deal, first of all, with the DMRE and the safety laws that's surrounding mining, and then also how to legislate and how to police the zamas to actually declare all the gold that they are mining.
Yeah.
And like I said, foremost is how do they do that safely. But for the miners in South Africa, I think it's a huge concern, because we are still, as a mining company, you're still responsible for the resource that you have, and you will be held accountable in law, in court,
Yeah.
if something should happen on your property, whether that's legal or illegal. And it's the illegal portion that's concerning, and especially with the levels of aggression that is increasing. Yeah. It makes it very difficult for the gold miner in South Africa to first of all incorporate or look at systems to incorporate.
Yeah.
Mining.
So Chris, the impression that is created, and I want you to answer to this, is that, for example, if we look at the situation in Krugersdorp where 10 women were raped, is that particular mining shaft was not properly sealed off, right? So the question is always around whether mining companies actually do care about sealing off decommissioned shafts as well as they should. And if they are not yet sealed off, do they put the necessary security around those particular shafts, ensuring that there's no activity that takes place? And to many South Africans' mind is that, no, miners just don't care. They only care about profits. They go in, they take out all the minerals that are underground, and then they leave that shaft just wide open for anyone to walk in.
Taba, me personally, I don't think that's accurate. What we have seen is that you can seal these shafts off as well as you can possibly do it. If there is value underground, the zamas will find a way to open those ends. Whether you pour 6 meters worth of concrete, they will find a way to open those up again.
So as far as you're concerned, is that industry is doing all it can, certainly, to discourage the activity of illegal mining?
I certainly think so, yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about the whole industry, but certainly mines that I've visited, mines that I've been involved in, is doing their best to try and seal off all open ends, all entrances to mines and open areas that can potentially collect guys like this.
Yeah. So I want to come back to you, and we're going to talk about what you're calling for legalized illicit mining and what other countries have approached and that particular aspect of things and how differently we're doing it here in the country. But let me go back to you, Willem, and let's talk about what you've just raised. I mean, for example, this question that you are raising around the fact that the highest possible charge, well, except for having no documents in the country that you can possibly bring to an illegal miner is a charge of trespassing. Why is the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Development Act so poor and having such a limited impact on illegal mining?
Yes, it's a challenge. As far back as I said, the early 2000s, we have advocated. We set up a task team. We did briefings to very high-level politicians and all the lawmakers, and it seems that it was not a priority up till now. When you're overwhelmed in South Africa with the amount of crime, and especially violent crime that we are facing, and the police with their lack of effective training in many ways, but also the lack of resources. They run from flashpoint to flashpoint and try to control instead of having a strategy in place in order to deal with this due to lack of resources and maybe leadership as well. So that is one of your main challenges that you face when it comes to legislation. Another point that I also take away from Chris is the high levels of violence and the high levels of criminality that involves these mining. It's not just a matter that these guys go in and they start to mine. Along with that mining operations of them, they need to involve a huge network of organized crime syndicates in order to make it happen. For one, they need explosives. They need to secure explosives. Those explosives currently are being smuggled. Most of them are being smuggled across the border from neighboring countries. They are coming in public transport. When you have 50 people on a bus, you have 25 to 50 kilograms of explosives in the boot, and together with the blasting accessories, your detonators. That's a time bomb that's ticking. It is just a matter of time before we're going to have a horrific incident with that, and almost on a weekly basis. People are being stopped at the borders, they are being apprehended. If you look at Pietermaritzburg or at Polokwane, you will see there are numerous court cases ongoing where people have been stopped with these explosives coming in. That is a really big challenge for us.
Yeah. What has been the reluctance, in as far as amending and reviewing our laws when it comes to the supply chain management of explosives? I believe, for example, there's been continued calls for proper controls and tracking of what you've mentioned now, those cartridges and those detonators that could be individually marked, and that would make it quite easy, for example, to use technology to be able to track that particular cartridge and know exactly where it came from.
Yeah, you are correct. Tabu, you are touching on a very contentious issue now. South Africa is still using Act 26 of 1956 in terms of explosives and the regulations of 1974. In 2003, they promulgated the new Explosives Act, and they started to draft the regulations. Up till now, those regulations have not been implemented. So that means that we are working with 1974-1956 legislation and regulations that is not effective enough in terms of regulating these explosives. Even though I must tell you one thing, and you must give praise where praise is due. I myself have been an inspector of explosives for many years, and the guys are really doing a good job. I think explosives control in South Africa is the best in the region, if not in the subcontinent. So that we must give them due. But also one of the challenges that you have is that you have three different departments that actually are enforcing these explosives regulations from different perspectives, where the police is only one. So there is also maybe not the coordination that is necessary. So that is your one challenge that you have. The barcoding of individual barcoding of your blasting cartridges will go a long way in order to effectively or more effectively control explosives in South Africa. We have been writing on that. We have really pushed for that, and then we were informed that the Minister of Police actually appointed a senior police general in order to oversee the implementation of the regulations, and then this general died during the pandemic. So that came to a standstill. So I think maybe it's time that we revive that initiative and implement regulations as soon as possible in order to secure more effective regulation of these explosives.
Yeah. Chris, I see you nodding on the question of explosive. What's the miners' feeling on that?
Yeah, I actually agree with Willie. There's a lot of efforts that the miners are going through to ensure that explosives are accounted for. I think the bigger problem is, all the audits that I've been through in my life, the problem never lies in the magazine, or very seldom lies in the magazine. Mm-hmm. It very seldom lies even down to the miner's box. You will still be able to track it up to there, but once it goes into the panels, once it goes into the faces or the development ends, if you blast, for instance, with a stick as a primer and anfex, the question is the miner actually charging with a full cartridge, or is he using half a cartridge? So is he using one cartridge for every second hole, or is he indeed charging a cartridge per hole? So I think there's the challenge, and there's where there is explosives that can disappear in the system, and where a miner or a charge hand that is charging up the faces, where they can actually siphon off some of these explosives, which is then not accounted for.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the experts saying that what happens is that the blasters who are properly employed in the mines themselves are the ones who, I don't know, as you put it, whether you use the whole cartridge or you use half the cartridge, and then they therefore make that available to the illegal miners at a cost.
Yeah, Toba, I think that the problem is, and we're getting back to the question of perhaps the word is greed, but the word definitely is fear as well. These syndicates are not working just on a remuneration basis to say, well, we will give you X amount of money per cartridge that you send us. These guys go as far as threatening guys, because they know who is working with explosives, who has their hands on explosives. And although I cannot prove that or even have an example of that, I can just imagine that these syndicates will target certain individuals and say, well, we need explosives from you because we know you're handling them.
Yeah. Are we approaching the illegal mining thing differently to other countries? I wanted us to come to that. You were, for example, pointing out Zimbabwe, right? There's also a study that was done by the ISS on Ghana, right? So Ghana says ban artisanal mining for a period. So they're saying for 2 years, we'll send in 400 soldiers or maybe other task team, and you ban artisanal mining completely. They did that in 2017. By 2018, they had arrested close to 1,687 illegal miners. And there are others who said, whoa, that's a heavy approach towards illegal mining. Are we ready for that heavy approach towards illegal mining? And of course, then we'll talk the alternative, which is what South Africa seemingly wants to go with. Chris?
Yeah, Toba, I personally think our battle is probably going to be a little bit steeper uphill than what our neighboring countries was. Our legislation, as fair as sometimes is actually geared to favor not always the legal party, but also the illegal party. That's one concern that we need to address. And the second concern is these syndicates have grown so strong that to introduce a system now is probably going to infuse a war. And I'm not sure if our police is currently will be able. And Willem has touched on skill, but also manpower to address this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. I mean, it's not, of course, just the arrests. Of course, they brought in the force. They brought in the soldiers who are going to enforce this in numbers. Whether we have that capacity or not, many have been calling for soldiers in those mining towns. But there are two other things that they've done. The other things that they've done is that they trained small-scale miners in responsible mining, but also they provided alternative livelihood resources.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think to go back to your first comment there about the soldiers, we must just remember that in South Africa we are being governed by the Constitution, and if you look at the Constitution, you look at what the mandate of each of your security agencies are. The military is not allowed actually to be deployed within South Africa unless it's been requested by the police and then it's been approved by Parliament. So it's a long process that it will have to go through, because remember, a soldier is trained to make war. A soldier is not trained to enforce the law. So that brings some challenges that you will have. But they are also, and we have seen in the past, that the soldiers have been deployed when it went through all these processes in order to strengthen the hand of the police. So that is one of the options that you have. Because of the manpower shortages, I think the police will have to rethink their strategies. I think the police will have to go back to basics and get things right from the ground. And then also, as Chris mentioned in the beginning about policies, we have to get the policy procedures and also the legislation in place before you can actually unleash the might of the law on these people. If they're not backed up by effective legislation, if they're not backed up by effective policies on where we're going, if we don't have a strategy in where we're going. For instance, like you mentioned, people being trained, for instance, legalizing part of it, controlling it, managing it. Anything that is uncontrolled is going to get out of hand, especially if it's illegal, and especially if it was lots of money at stake. Because remember, we're talking here about lots of money. It's a very rich commodities that they are mining, chrome, etc., etc. And then also your challenge is, like Chris also said, that these gangs have been institutionalized. They've been here for too long. They gain in strength. They are organized. The other day, when we were in Dar es Salaam, I was speaking to the police of SADC there, and I asked him, so what is organized crime and the police, and why do we call them organized crime? And one officer says, maybe because the police is not so organized. That is the challenge that we're facing with. You have to plan. You have to be one step ahead of your adversaries in order for you to win the battle. Yeah. And we are not there at this stage. You need very good intelligence. It starts with intelligence. And then you need a very good strategy based on that intelligence. And then also the criminality about it, just the lawlessness of these people and how they interlink with all the huge organized crime networks. Yeah. I mean, I just read just before we came on air, I read about an incident in Sekhukhune in the Limpopo province where these illegal miners just moved onto a plot of a lady, and they came in with their heavy machinery, and they started digging trenches and holes there, and they started mining on the premises. And they came with guns, and they threatened them away. And so the police was called. Some of them were arrested, but these guys, the challenge that you have with that is also whenever the police is involved with these type of crimes, which organized crime, where a lot of money is at stake. Unfortunately, so some of them are open to corruption, and then that facilitates further the operations of these people.
Yeah. Chris, that's the challenge, is it not? The lawlessness of it all. Because Minister Mantashe has been, for example, pushing for the legalizing of the illicit miners by issuing licenses. And I think at some point there was a task team that was set up to license these artisanal miners. It has not been successful, right? Not as successful, I suppose, as the arrest that they've seen in Ghana of 1,600 people. But what has happened is that illegal mining has continued in the country, which then begs the question, is the objective to create livelihoods, or is the objective of the criminal syndicates to escape the rule of law? So if you legalize it, if their intention is to escape the rule of law, they are still not going to be doing things properly.
And Thabo, you've touched on exactly what we've been trying to say. These syndicates, and it's not just the syndicates. It is a lawlessness culture that we've grown accustomed to in this country. If you look at from how people adhere to the rules of the law of road rules. Right through to mining, to all rules that's been rules and laws that's been laid down in the country. It's a general lawlessness that's been allowed to fester in this country, and illegal mining is just one of them. And I think it's a steep uphill for our police force to try and deal with all this lawlessness in this country. And each one of them needs to be tackled, and each one of them needs to have a strategy in how you can tackle them. And I agree with Willem. Even before you start tackling the problem, there needs to be some coherence in how you're going to address this, and what systems and what rules and new laws you're going to put in place. And if the rules aren't set in stone and been agreed to as workable, there's going to be no need or no point in trying to enforce them.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll take more of your thoughts and wrap up the conversation with our panel tonight, Willem Els, who's with the Institute of Security Studies, and mining expert Chris van Aswegen. 072-110-5584. Do the laws in the country do enough to contend with the syndicates that control illegal mining? What are your thoughts tonight? Otherwise, tweet us at Newzroom405. In Focus continues shortly. We're back live with you tonight here on In Focus, and the conversation still on the country's tackling of illegal mining here. in South Africa, following the arrest of several kingpins who have been behind some illegal mining operations in the country. This has renewed some hope of a momentum that is beginning to take shape and emerge in terms of the fight against illegal mining. Well, we're asking the question tonight. Do we have enough laws? Are there laws that are in place geared towards dealing with syndicates that control illegal mining in the country? 072-110-5584. That's where you can send us your thoughts, or you can tweet us tonight at Newzroom 405. Willem, what does your research show? Is this activity driven by poverty or by ruthless criminality, or a little bit of both? And we can't ignore the fact that there's some poverty in it as well.
Tabu, yes, being in a country, in a continent like Africa, where poverty is rampant, and also unemployment, not only in South Africa, but from the neighboring countries where these people are coming from, yes, poverty do play a role. But, criminality took precedence over that. The criminality, the greed, because even the futsal level, if you look at your organized crime triangle, at the bottom you've got your foot soldiers, that are your zamas mining, and then it goes up with the organizers, buyers, etc., up till the kingpins right at the top of the triangle. If the zama at the futsal level can go and buy himself a house with what he's doing here, etc., 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 and he's driving around with the car back home. So that means that it's lucrative for people who come from poverty, who do not have a regular job. So yes, it's both. But I think the challenge that we have is, even though when poverty is driving it, if it is not effectively regulated, it opens the door wide open for criminality to take over, and then your syndicates move in, and then they hijack it, and then it's getting out of control, as it is at the moment in South Africa.
Now, when you look at that, I mean, you mentioned, in fact, even the police minister mentioned that the people that they arrested, for example, in Krugersdorp, he says, these are zamas, they mine gold, but nothing, when you look at them, looks like gold. I mean, what he's implying there is that, yes, it is lucrative, but not lucrative for the zamas themselves. It's lucrative for the bulk buyers. It's lucrative for whoever they're selling it to, who manage to clean it up and put it in the system so that it's exported and it's refined in all sorts of ways. Why are those players in the criminal network escaping the arrests that we are seeing?
Yes, I hear what you say. Even though we see the people, the zama on the ground, when they live here, they live in poverty, they live in holes, they live in real bad situations. But, when you go onto the sites, you go down in the mine where some of these zamas, they live 2.5 kilometers underground in the Madala sites. And when we got to their compounds where they live underground, we discovered obscene amounts of money. These guys are really, it's a lot of money. Now, if they make so much money, that money they normally take back out. They don't spend it here. They spend it here maybe on liquor and women and stuff like that. But the majority of that is being taken out of the country and is taken out of our economy. Then there's the second thing that you mentioned, the kingpins. Those are the people, and of course, the higher up in the hierarchy, your buyers, your people that are washing the gold. Now, washing the gold is a contentious issue. One of the ways they are doing it, just as with money, you have to wash the money that is illegal money in order to allow it into the mainstream. The same with gold. And we see that one of the methods that they use is your pawn shops and your second-hand jewelry shops that then take this gold and then they melt it together with their jewelry, and then they sell it as to be second-hand jewelry that has been reprocessed, and they export the gold legally. So it has been washed, it is in the mainstream, etc., etc. Those are the people making big money.
Yeah, and those are the people, Chris, that are part of the industry that many are saying they go untouched. They go as part of this network, but they are not accounting to what we are seeing as a rise in illegal mining.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate reality, Thabo. And I think that's where the police needs to try and infiltrate these syndicates and try and see who the kingpin players are. I think Willem touched earlier on it. In his saying, just being in the ears of the hippo. These syndicates are real big, and I've also seen video clips of obscene amounts of money that these guys are dealing with. But during the break, and I'm actually fearing that you never asked the question, is are there some success stories out there? And the answer to that is yes. I've certainly seen on some operations where there was some of the illegal miners that was incorporated in mining teams in certain areas, and for the lack of identity, I'm not going to mention names and businesses. But I've certainly seen where there was ex-zamas that works under one of the employees of the mine. It's normally a senior employee. He ensures that the safety is adhered to, but then in return there's an agreement made with the zamas that they will be fairly paid. Now, of course, that raises a whole conundrum of other things, because there's people now on the rest of your mine that's earning a much lower salary than what these guys are earning. So you need to be very careful to say we're allowing on the same property legalized illegal mining, for the lack of better words, and then to keep your own people doing work, but they're getting paid less. But I've certainly seen that there is success stories where you can incorporate these zamas, they can mine safely. They actually, when they see there is money coming in, because we've touched on that, how much of this is greed and how much of this is just poverty and just trying to find a way to provide for my family. And there's definitely, you can see most of it is starting with a desperate need to get food on the table. And then as the money comes in and as the guys start getting more and more lucrative, then the greed kicks in, and then the lawlessness is also creeping in.
I know, Chris, you didn't mention any names, but I'm sure people are listening to us and their ears are already up and are thinking, how do you regulate the tax part of that, because it's unaccounted for, and what happens in that whole kind of arrangement? Because part of course, the criminal network that comes with illegal mining is tax evasion, is human trafficking, is firearms, explosive, and all sorts of things. But the tax component of it, how do you address that in that context?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, It's difficult, and we spoke about it earlier, to get a well-established syndicate to try and adopt a system where they say, well, we've been making 100% profit now. Now we need to cut down and we're only making 25% profit, and then still I need to pay tax on this 25% profit. So yes, we're definitely not saying there's all the answers is there, but I say there is a workable solution. If everybody sees that there is money coming in, the gold is still accounted for, because the gold is going into the mining system. So the gold you can account for, and you can then actually get a system where you say to these guys, you're getting 25%, but of this 25%, it needs to be taxed as well. The same way you need to adhere to the safety laws of the company, you also need to adhere to the legislation of this country.
If the focus, Willem, is to legalize the illicit miners, or to change their status to being illegal, what are the risk factors and how do we mitigate?
Yeah, that's a good question. As Chris has mentioned, if you can make 100% profit, why would you now agree to cut it down to 25% and then also not to be taxed on that? Because at the moment, you must just understand that for the illegal miner that doesn't have to adhere to any safety regulations of health and safety, and also they're not paying taxes, they can mine this gold way cheaper than your regular mining companies. So because they have to adhere to all of those, and they're also being heavily taxed. So they have to pay their water, they have to pay electricity, and all of those things that these people are just stealing when they are sharing, as we can call it, the mine down underground. It's not. I'm not talking about the other sites where they make use of their own equipment, where it's not a legal mining entity that they're sharing it with. So that's a real challenge. And in order to legalize that, first of all, we need legislation. They will have to amend the Mining Act. They will have to bring in new regulations in order to accommodate this new thing. We can't just now just. It's also very similar as we say, okay, now we've got so many illegal immigrants here. Let's just open up the borders. It will be chaos. The same with the illegal mining. You have to regulate. You have to come up with all those foundations need to be laid in terms of legislation, in terms of your policies and procedures, but also in terms of training of the different entities before they can start to even think of doing that.
Yeah. Chris, the other question is, of course, how do you create alternative livelihood resources for people in the communities where you mine? And that's also part of the criticism of the industry and mining companies in particular, that they don't do enough for those communities, and the communities then see no other alternative but to pursue illegal mining.
Yeah, Toba, I think Willem's touched on it. Mines are already very heavily taxed, and I've certainly worked on mines. There's a general belief out there that if you have a gold mine, you're basically printing money. But if you look at all the costs that a mine has to go through, it doesn't necessarily say that a gold producing mine is making so much money that they don't know what to do with the money. And with all the legislation, with your environmental impact assessment, and with your human relations and with your community involvement, there is plans that's been approved and been agreed to between the mines and the DMRE and the communities to try and uplift the communities. And in some instances, I do agree that there is mines that can do more, but certainly in some instances there's mines that just cannot afford to do more. But I think the short answer, if there is a mine that has illegal mining, if you can legalize that and you can do it accurately, it means that there is then to the mine there's an additional amount of money and gold that's coming in, which would then come into the same pot, and then there can be agreement with the community, because I do think that there needs to be involvement with the community as well, to ensure that the guys that now is not working within the boundaries of the set of rules that you agreed to, that they can get reported. And the community needs to realize if they don't report them, then they're also not going to benefit from proceeds that is going to the mines.
And Willem, we have touched on it, but one of our WhatsApp messages is asking that question, and maybe we must ask it a little bit more explicitly to say, is there something we can do, particularly to deal with the market? Because as long as there's a market, of course, there'll be product that is circulated there. Let's have a look at this. 072-110-5584. Letsang in Mpumalanga saying, the problem with zamas is the market. Once the market is identified and dealt with, that will be the end of this issue. I compare this with the rhino horns and drug markets. Once there is still an open and successful market, the song is endless. Where are the people taking the product to? That's Letsang. They say, let's stop playing politics. Bashir saying, good evening, Taba. I must agree with one of your panelists who said that we live in a country that is lawlessness. Undoubtedly, the issue of zamas is one of them. We are fighting a losing battle. Makabe Moabi in Mayatin say, good evening. The best thing to do is to turn the unauthorized mining system into a business opportunity, a real value creation. I will outline how in my October file note. We're looking forward to that, Makabe. A quick one there, Willem, as we wrap up. Who is the market and how do we deal with it?
Okay, in the first place, as long as you've got a demand, you will have a supply. If there's no demand, your supply will dwindle and there won't be a market for them. And that is common mathematics, if you can call it like that. So yeah, your challenge is that your kingpins are taking the money out of the country. They got various markets. One of the main markets is to Dubai. You've got an illicit trafficking route towards Dubai and also to India, where this money is then reworked into jewelry and sold, etc., etc. It's a very lucrative market. The other day I actually found out when I was in East Africa, the police there informed me that they picked up that the illegal the illegal gold from the DRC that is smuggled out to Uganda and Rwanda is then taken to Dubai, but because it's illegal gold, it's not in the mainstream. They then ship it off to South Africa, where it is then melted with the second-hand jewelry here in South Africa and exported legally back to Dubai. That's one of the ways they're doing it. So the only way, that's just an example of how it happens. And we will have to, and the first thing is, as I mentioned, you have to have an effective intelligence. You have to infiltrate these syndicates. You have to go down to proper policing, old-fashioned policing, gather your intelligence, do a good investigation, arrest the people, prepare the case file, and then take them to court.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on and helping us in this conversation. Willem Els, who is with the Institute of Security Studies, and mining expert Chris van Aswegen. And thank you for your engagement tonight.